Good morning for fifth grade. How you guys doing? All right, so today we're going to continue with Obama's presidency. Okay, we're going to look at some challenges that he experienced during his presidency, and the beginning of his presidency and those kinds of things. So today we're going to look at his Nobel Peace Prize. We're going to look at Iraq. We're going to look at Afghanistan. And we're going to look at Benghazi. And the Arab Spring. Osama bin Laden. Okay, so those are the things we're going to examine today in his presidency. This looks like it's going to be a really long video, so I will let you know at the end if you're going to be doing any reading on your own and packet pages, okay? So this is going to be page 434 through 437 in your book, okay? All right. Excuse me. So again, I have my notes. I have a lot of notes. That's why I'm thinking it's going to be a long time. Okay? All right. So we're going to look at his foreign affairs first. So he decided he wanted to build stronger relationships with the United States and foreign countries. And so a lot of people felt that President Bush had made the relations more strained between our country and other countries. And so Obama felt that he needed to go all around the world and talk to all the leaders, okay? And some people called this his apology tour. So he went around and apologized for America being great and stuff, is what some people felt he did. He claimed he went around to, well, he did say he did go around to apologize for America trying to stick their nose in everything. And so that's what he did. He flew all around the world and talked to too many people. And as you know, he was elected in 2008. He was inaugurated in January of 2009. And he won the Nobel Peace Prize in October of 2009. Okay. Now, he won the Peace Prize according to the Nobel Organization because they claimed that he encouraged international relations. Okay, that was why they gave it to him. However, at that time, some Americans thought that this was a bad decision because he had been elected president and had been inaugurated in January and did his little tour and then got the Nobel Peace Prize. Some of them thought that it wasn't really, he didn't really do anything to deserve it because they were thinking about people like Martin Luther King Jr., okay? Martin Luther King Jr. also won the Nobel Peace Prize. in the 60s. And he won it because he led groups of African American people in the United States to try to get their rights as American citizens. So they felt that he deserved it because he changed America. He really did. He fought for those who were oppressed, and he did it in a peaceful manner. They did sit-ins and they did marches, and they just made people aware of the problem, and he did it in a very peaceful way. And they were thinking about people like Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter brokered a peace treaty between Egypt and Israel, which is huge because peace treaties in the Middle East are very difficult to come by. Okay. And he spent a lot of his life trying to make peace with people. Now, he didn't always go about it in a God honoring sort of way. And sometimes some of his ideas seemed kind of foolish to people. And to be honest, the Egyptian-Israel thing didn't turn out so good for the leader of Egypt or Israel because they were both assassinated because of the peace treaty. But that was a really huge, big deal. And he got the Nobel Peace Prize. So those were the kinds of people that they were thinking about and going, well, what did President Obama do? He got elected, he toured the world, and then he got a Peace Prize. So that's why some people were kind of upset about that. Okay? All right. The Iraq War. So you know that as the senator, because he was a senator for a couple years, literally, like a couple years, before he ran for president, and he was always against the Iraq War. He felt that we should not go into Iraq for any reason. And so he made a promise during his campaign, remember, to pull the troops out. Okay? So he said in February of 2009, remember, he doesn't take over until January of 2009. So this is really quick. Okay? So February 2009, he promised that all the troops would be out by 2010 August. Okay? So he did that. He pulled them out, and he left a group there to provide security and to advise the Iraqi government because they had set up a new government. It was supposed to be a democracy. None of this really worked out very well. Okay. You can tell that by the fact that we have U.S. troops in Iraq today. Okay. So he did pull them out. He pulled them out down to 50,000 people in 2010. And those 50,000 people were supposed to help keep the peace. They were supposed to train the Iraqi army. They were supposed to train the Iraqi police. They were supposed to train the government how to be a government. So that was kind of their job. They weren't allowed to fight. Some of them did get killed because of snipers and IEDs, which are like homemade bombs. They make them out of things that you wouldn't expect and then lay in wait, and is not a good thing. So eventually those 50,000 people were pulled out in December of 2011, and all the troops were gone from Iraq. Okay? The only troops that were left in Iraq were the ones that were protecting the embassy. Oh, embassy. Have you ever had that? All of a sudden your brain is not working to spell a word you know how to spell. Fun. Okay. So, only a small group were left to guard the embassy. To be honest, every place that we have an embassy, we have military personnel that guard that embassy. Usually they're Marines that guard the embassy, and everywhere we have an embassy, even if it's not like a hostile nation. So like in Belgium, okay, we have an embassy in Brussels, and my very good friend's husband was in charge of all the Marines that guarded the embassy in Brussels for a while. This was like a long, long time ago, like 1998. Yeah, I think he started in 97 and he was there for 3 years, is usually how long they're there. And so he was in charge of all the Marines that guarded the embassy in Brussels. So even though Belgium has never been like an enemy of the United States, we still have guards there. So we have embassies all over the world. We have like an embassy in Israel. We have an embassy in Kenya. We have embassies like everywhere. Okay. And there's always people who stay on guard. So by December of 2011, that was all that was left in Iraq is the people to guard the embassy. Okay? Does that make sense? Page 2. Okay, so just because we left Iraq did not mean Iraq was peaceful. Iraq was anything but peaceful. There was a lot of violence in Iraq. Okay? Because remember we talked about how there's 3 groups of people in Iraq and they don't really like each other. And so they argue and they fight and they use guns and things like that when they argue and they fight. Not just like words or fists, but guns and bombs and chemical weapons and all kinds of things that they use. So the Sunni and the Shia Muslims were fighting against each other. And then you had the Arabs and the Kurds fighting against each other. And it was just all quite bad. And it still is. I mean, it's not a peaceful place even today. That is something interesting about the Middle East. Now remember, the Middle East includes like Israel, right? Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Kuwait, Libya, okay? So these are places that have been around since biblical times, and they are all fighting each other, and they've always been fighting each other. And every president comes in to the United States, when they become president, their goal is always to bring peace to the Middle East. I've heard peace in the Middle East my whole entire life, and we have yet to achieve peace in the Middle East. They just don't seem to get along. They don't seem to be happy with each other. So it has been an issue like since the beginning of time or something. I don't know. Definitely since like Bible times, they've been fighting there. Okay, so because there was a power void in Iraq and there was all this fighting, a new group of terrorists comes in called ISIS, and they have to send troops back to Iraq again. Okay, here's another cool secret. Whenever we've gone to war with a country, we always leave a military presence. So in World War II, in the end of World War II, we actually had a base that is still there today in Germany. Okay, Ramstein is one of them. It's the Air Force base. It's huge, and it's been there ever since World War II ended. Also, Japan. We have bases in Japan. We have a Navy base for sure, and an Air Force base, because I've been to both of those in Japan, and I'm pretty sure there's Army. Marines is on Okinawa, which is an island off of Japan. And so we kind of stay. So our problem is, like in places like Iraq, we win the war, but we don't stay. So when we leave, everybody fights for power, and then you bring in other groups of terrorists like ISIS, and then we got to go back. Okay? That's one of the reasons the Afghan people didn't want to help us at all in the beginning, was because they said, yeah, you guys have been here before, you make things happen, and then you leave, and we're all here to fend for ourselves. And so that is a problem. Okay, that happens. So I don't know the best solution, but I just look at history, because you know, guys, I love history and I study a lot of history. And so that's just kind of the things I've noticed. All right, let's continue. Let's look at Afghanistan. Okay, So please realize that Iraq and Afghanistan are going on at the same time. Please realize that today we still have people in Iraq and Afghanistan. Okay? There's still issues in those areas and probably always will be. But when we went to hunt out terrorism, we started in Afghanistan because that's where Osama bin Laden came from. See, sometimes I mix up their names. So Osama bin Laden came from. And then we went to Iraq because of the whole weapons of mass destruction that we talked about in last chapter, how everybody was saying that they had weapons of mass destruction. President Bush was worried about terrorism, so he went in, didn't find anything, and then everybody said he lied about it. But remember we talked about that, it was in the book last chapter, and it talked about how everybody thought that. The UN thought that, all countries thought that. So it wasn't that President Bush lied, it's what everybody thought, it just wasn't the truth at the time. All right? Okay, so Afghanistan. Obama promised to end the war in Afghanistan too. But in 2009, it was super violent. Okay? A lot of those IEDs and infighting, because again, everybody's trying to take over Afghanistan. They tried to stabilize the country. In 2009, he sent tens of thousands more troops to Afghanistan. So he's pulling out of Iraq, but he's sending more troops to Afghanistan because the violence is huge in Afghanistan. Okay? He was hoping with sending more troops that he could calm down the area, that it would be more peaceful. All right, that was his hope, his goal, his intention. Again, we're still having issues there, although I don't know if they're as bad anymore. I'm not sure. I haven't been watching the news for a while, so I don't know. Okay, so Afghanistan is full of a bunch of different tribes. So think of like a bunch of different families. And you know how families kind of fight, right? So they have all these different like families, tribes that fight each other, and they all want power. Okay? But again, they don't fight with their words and their fists, they fight with guns and grenades and missiles and those kinds of things. All right? So this did not work well just kind of because of the way things are there. It's hard for peace to be there even without intervention, and with intervention it doesn't seem to happen either. Okay, so hang on guys, I lost my place. So back to Iraq. No, I'm sorry, we're still in Afghanistan. Okay, so the president of Afghanistan becomes Hamid Karzai. That's how you say his name. Karzai. But some people thought maybe he was corrupt. Some people, because he was trying to make peace with the Taliban. And the Taliban is a known terrorist group. Okay? And so he was negotiating with them. So people got upset about that. And he ends up resigning. Okay? So on May 2nd, 2011, Osama bin Laden was killed by Navy SEALs. Okay, they had actually been hunting Osama bin Laden ever since the attacks in 9/11. Remember, which was September 11th, 2001. So they've been hunting him for a lot of years. He's very elusive. Okay. He hides out a lot and stuff, so he's really hard to get to. But finally, they discovered where he was. And so May 2nd, 2011, a group of Navy SEALs, and unfortunately, President Obama talked about the Navy SEALs, okay? So there's certain things that are kind of like secret in the military. So submarines are secret in the military. We don't tell people where our submarines are or what they're doing. Navy SEALs are the same way. They're secret. We don't tell that Navy SEALs went off and did this or went off and did that, because it's dangerous for people to know the things that they do. It's dangerous for the Navy SEALs. It's dangerous for the families of the Navy SEALs. So we keep those kinds of things secret. But President Obama didn't think about that. Maybe, I'm not really sure. He was so excited by the fact that we finally killed Osama bin Laden that maybe he didn't really think about it, because not only did he say a SEAL team did it, but he named the SEAL team. So SEAL teams have different, I don't really know, numbers, letters, things like that. And so he said, I remember him saying this, it was SEAL Team 6 that took out Osama bin Laden. So if you can find out who the people are on SEAL Team 6, immediately they all became targets for terrorism, and their families did. So they had to start moving people and stuff. It was kind of a mess. And I don't know if he didn't think about that or somebody didn't tell him that. I don't know what happened in there, but it was a really big problem. So they found Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, okay? And that's where they ended up killing him. So now we're going to talk about Osama bin Laden. We're going to give you some background on this guy, okay? All right. So Osama bin Laden was born in 1957. So he was born in Saudi Arabia, okay? So the cultures are very different in Saudi Arabia. So Osama bin Laden's dad is married to a whole bunch of women. I don't know how many. But that's a very common thing in the Middle East, okay? So we can remember even biblical examples. So Jacob, yes, Jacob was married to 4 women, okay, yes. Rachel and Leah are the ones that I always remember, and then their handmaids, which I can never remember their names. So he had 4 wives. King David had tons of wives. King Solomon had 1,000 wives, literally 1,000 wives. I think it was 900 and something. Give me 1 second, guys. So that was the way the culture was, or is. So they had he had a whole bunch of wives. So Osama bin Laden had 49 brothers and sisters. Okay, siblings. He was one of 50. Of course, fun fact, my grandpa was one of 25, and my grandpa, my grandma and my grandpa were the only 2 people to make 25 children. So, so he had 49 brothers and sisters. He was one of 50 children. His dad worked in construction, and his dad ended up being very wealthy because his dad built stuff for the royal family, okay? So Saudi Arabia is not a democracy. Saudi Arabia is a monarchy. Saudi Arabia is run by the royal family. Still today, Saudi Arabia is run by the royal family, okay? So if you get a construction company that builds everything for the royal family, you can become wealthy too, all right? Osama bin Laden's dad is a billionaire, or at least was at the time. And so he grew up pretty comfortably, although imagine if you had to share your mom and dad, your dad, with 49 other kids. Okay, not a lot of time for you, yeah? So he was kind of and he wasn't the firstborn, so he wasn't considered a very valuable member of the family. So his dad didn't spend much time with him, okay? Osama bin Laden went into, I'll just read it the way it is, was influenced by a radical Wahhabi Muslim teachings. which said, hey, we should go back to the strict ways of Islam. Okay, we should grab the Quran, we should follow it exactly to the letter. And there's a lot of stuff in the Quran that is about war and fighting, and it talks a lot about like killing infidels, and infidels are anybody who's not Muslim. Okay, so I'm an infidel, you're an infidel. It's just that's kind of the way it is, but that's just what they teach, and that is called radical Islam. Okay, and that's kind of what Osama bin Laden was thinking about. Um, so let me give you some background on Afghanistan. Like I said, Afghanistan, a lot of people have been trying to take it over, and this plays into Osama bin Laden and where he ends up later. Okay, so that's why we go back. So the Soviet Union had tried to take over Afghanistan as well. And when they did, Osama bin Laden supported the guerrilla fighters. So guerrilla fighters are people who don't wear uniforms. They're kind of like military, but they're not military. They run in, they shoot people, they blow up things, and they run away. Okay, that's what it's called. And I want to spell guerrilla for you in case you ever see it, because it's not like the gorilla, the animal. Okay, that's how you spell guerrilla fighters. Or guerrilla. Yeah. Okay, and that's what they do. They run in, they cause destruction, and they run out. Okay, and they'll come in at night undercover so that you don't see them, that kind of thing. So these guerrilla fighters in Afghanistan were called, give me 1 second. They were called the Mujahideen. I have to always remember how you say it. And so he supported them. He learned things from them. Okay. So Osama bin Laden goes and starts setting up schools in both Afghanistan and Pakistan to teach people the radical Islam ways, to get them excited about those things. And he starts recruiting the best, okay, from those schools as his terrorist group, to come into his group. And his group he calls Al-Qaeda. Okay. So the Saudi Arabian government is not so thrilled with the stuff he's doing. So and he's not so thrilled with them. Okay. So back in, I just lost it, 1989, there we go. Saddam Hussein, Iraqi leader, had gone into Kuwait and said, hey, this is our country now. Okay, again, it's background to understand Osama. This is our country now. It's always been part of Iraq, and we're taking it over. Okay, so they invaded Kuwait, which freaked Saudi Arabia out, because they thought, oh no, if he can invade Kuwait, he could invade here too. So Saudi Arabia called the United States president, which was President Bush, the first President Bush, and said, hey, can you come help us? And so he went ahead and he went and sent troops to Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia said, come, America, come protect us. And they set up military bases there in order to use it as a base of operations, it's called, so that they can fly planes and they can move equipment into Kuwait to get rid of Iraq, drive them out of Kuwait. Okay. Well, Osama bin Laden was super angry that Saudi Arabia allowed American troops to come into his country. Okay, remember, he's born in Saudi Arabia. He is a Saudi Arabian citizen. At this point in history, he was later going to lose it. I'll tell you about that. But at this point in history, he was mad because, again, he is radicalized, and he believes that all Americans are infidels. And how dare they allow those people to come in to Saudi Arabia, his country, and set up military bases. even though it was to protect Saudi Arabia from Iraq. But he was mad about that. So that made him very, very upset. So because he's upset, and remember, it's a monarchy in Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia actually kicks Osama bin Laden out of the country, tells him, go away, do not come back. And they did it in 91. January 16th, 1991 is when the Iraq War starts. It's called Desert Storm. And so in 91, they also kick him out of the country. Okay? He does a lot of bad things. He's a bad dude. And so in 1994, they end up taking away his Saudi citizenship because they uncovered a plot that he was going to overthrow the Saudi monarchy. And so the king's like, yeah, I don't think that's happening. And so he said, you are no longer a citizen of Saudi Arabia. Okay? Which then made him even more upset. All right? So bin Laden was behind a whole bunch of terrorist attacks on the United States. Okay? So he was behind a 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. Okay? In 1993, they drove a truck into the parking garage, which is underneath the Trade Center, blew it up in hopes of making the tower fall. The tower did not fall. People were hurt. Some people were killed. They put into effect evacuation procedures and safety procedures and all these kinds of things so that that wouldn't happen again. Okay? In 1998, he bombed embassies. Okay, U.S. embassies. Remember I said they're all around the world? Okay. So he bombed the U.S. embassy in Kenya and Tanzania, which I know we talked about before in the last chapter. So he was responsible for bombing those. He didn't do it personally. Yeah, he got people together. He drew up plans. He sent them out. Okay. He did not do it personally. He was not, setting up the truck and bombing, but it's because of him. He made up the plan. He got the people together. He got the equipment. He sent them out. All right. And he is responsible for the, was it 2000? The 2000 bombing of the USS Cole. Okay, the Cole was anchored. There were boats that would come out and they would sell them things, or they would take things off like trash from the U.S. ships. This was standard procedure. It's what we did until the Cole blew up. Okay, so they had, it was called a suicide bomber. So anytime a person comes in and they're going to bomb, but they're going to die in the process, it's called suicide bombing. So the USS Cole was that kind of thing. They brought the little boat up to the side of the Cole, and then they detonated the bomb, which blew a hole in the Cole, the USS Cole. A lot of Navy guys died that day. Yeah. So then they have changed everything. They don't let ships come up to the United States ships anymore. Little boats. And he attacked U.S. troops in the Middle East. Remember, they're in Saudi Arabia, they're in Iraq, they're in Afghanistan. And so he would lead some of these attacks on the troops there. See, look, we're already at a half hour. Woo! And I still got a lot to do. Yeah. Okay. So, in 1998, okay, he makes an announcement. Okay, like a videotape that they then play on Al Jazeera TV. Okay, and Osama bin Laden calls for the death of every American and every Jewish person. no matter how old. Okay? Women, children, doesn't matter. He says we need to kill them all. Okay? And so that was his plan, is to kill all Americans and to kill all Jewish people. Okay? Of course, we also know that in 2001, he was behind the whole attack that on September 11th. He got the pilots to get training. He got the money to send them to the training, for them to live in the United States. And he was behind the airplanes crashing into the North and South Tower of the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and then wherever that one was supposed to go, that ended up crashing into a field in Pennsylvania. Okay, that was him too. Not a good dude. Okay, really, really bad dude. The U.S. were looking to capture or kill Osama bin Laden. They would have captured him. They'd been happy to do that. But if he put up a fight, they were going to take him out. Okay? And then, of course, like we said, they found him in Abbottabad, Pakistan, where he was shot and killed. Okay? They took his body and all the documents he had around them, which in hopes of finding out other plans that he had so that they could stop them. And he was buried at sea. They didn't even bring his body all the way back. Okay? All right. So, huge, huge victory taking him out. So, like I said, President Obama, Osama, Obama, they sound very similar. President Obama, not that they're similar. I'm not saying that, just their names sound similar, which is why I have to think sometimes. Okay. So Obama was super excited that they took out Osama. Okay. All right. So another thing that happened was the Arab Spring. So the Arab Spring was the Middle East people started saying, hey, we want to be have democracy like the United States. And they start protesting, and they start fighting, and they start trying to think, and they start trying to get their freedom. So some people are excited about it. Some people are worried about it because, again, this is the Middle East. There's always been these problems. And some people thought, well, hey, if we get democracy, it will be great. Other people said, well, wait, if we have a vacuum of power, it's going to be an issue. Okay? So what they did was Obama kind of started this off. Okay? He was in Cairo, Egypt, and he talked about how sorry, trying to think of what he talked about. He talked about democracy, I know. Okay? And so people started protesting in Tunisia, Egypt, Yemen, Syria, Libya, and Bahrain. Okay? That's the Arab Spring. It happened in spring, which is why they call it Arab Spring. So Obama, sorry, I talked about Osama so long. Obama had to make a decision because he was very critical of Bush sticking his nose into places that he didn't belong. Remember we talked about this? So he had to decide, does Obama keep his nose out of what's happening in the Middle East, or does he come out and support somebody? So he made his decision to come out and support the protesters. Okay? And in doing that, he empowered them even more. So what happens in the end, I'll just give you the end, is that the power vacuum occurs, and we get a whole bunch of more crazy leaders than they had before. So some of the leaders before were had crazy ideas, but they were okay to their people. What happens at the end of this is they get people in charge who are horrible to the people. Like, okay, so Bahrain, I'm running out of time because this only records for so long. Bahrain, what happened there is the government jailed all the protesters. Yemen, the president stepped down. Egypt, the president stepped down and gave, and it failed to achieve peace. In fact, Christians were killed in Egypt, and people stopped going to Egypt. It was a mess in Egypt. But nothing was as bad as Libya. That's where we get into Benghazi. So Libya turned into a complete civil war. Okay. Gaddafi was a very powerful, not so great, not so nice guy who ran Libya. And they were worried that he was going to fly planes and bomb the protesters. So the UN, the United Nations, made a no-fly zone over Libya. October 2001, Gaddafi was actually killed. Okay. 1 year after Gaddafi's death, there was still no peace. So September 11th, and some people think it's because of the anniversary of 9/11, September 11th of 2012, Benghazi. Okay, this is our embassy in Libya. Okay, they attacked the embassy and they killed the ambassador. Now, this was the first time and only time in American history ever that an ambassador has been killed. Okay, and so the American people were super upset with Obama and Hillary Clinton. Remember, Hillary Clinton is the Secretary of State. She is in charge of security of the embassies, and they feel that she failed them. Okay. I am now out of time for this. So what I'm going to do is I am going to continue to Monday because you don't have. So no, what's it called? No packet, no reading. We have spent almost our whole 45 minutes discussing this. I told you it was going to be long. So I'm going to draw a line and we're going to pick it up tomorrow. We'll start again with Benghazi, Libya, and that'll be it. Okay? So I'll see you on Monday. Bye, guys.